and welcome to UC Today. I'm Susie Harrison, Head of Content. AI is increasingly utilised to ensure compliance during sensitive and challenging conversations, particularly in sectors like finance, healthcare, and corporate governance. AI-driven tools assist in monitoring interactions, analysing language for regulatory adherence, and providing real-time feedback to prevent potential violations. So to gain insights into how enterprises can leverage AI surveillance as part of their compliance and regulation toolkit, I'm delighted to be joined by Donald McElligott, who is VP of Compliance Supervision at Compliance Expert Global Relay. So thank you for joining me, Donald.
Thanks for having me.
So let's set the scene a bit here now. And can you just describe what you mean by what difficult conversations are?
Sure. In terms of the technology, difficult conversations for supervision come about when you get voice conversations that might be terrible audio quality. A lot of the traditional voice that comes from a trading floor or a trading environment can be on just terrible quality lines, so there's a lot of noisy static. Sometimes they're recorded in rooms where there's basically an open microphone. You can hear voices over the background. Transcription back, really only 12 months ago would have just made a mess of that. You would barely get anything coherent out of it, and especially when you factor in the various accents across the world, it makes it a real challenge just in terms of getting that recognized properly. There's also the side where it's the content itself. Traditional kind of approach to supervising this is to look for words and phrases that trigger, the idea that something risky is happening. Most folks that are communicating in these forums, they're aware of those kind of words. They're not going to explicitly talk about illegal things out in the open on a recorded line. So they're going to use, vague language. They're going to use terms that would not normally trigger any kind of a traditional lexicon. So the challenge is both in getting the words right and then getting the context of the words in place.
So that leads us beautifully on to my next question, which was, what is the biggest challenges the financial institutions face when in regulatory compliance, and how can AI help mitigate these risks?
Everybody's number 1, 2, and 3 priorities is false positives. Traditionally, the bigger the volume, the bigger the firm, the more content they're having to review, and inevitably the more false positives they have. No matter the technology, whether it was pure lexicon, random sample, even some recent AI, more machine learning approaches, they just constantly battle false positives. It's on everybody's list of things. So it means a regular reviewer trying to come in and start their day has to weed through thousands of just irrelevant nonsense with the hope of finding that 10 or 15 messages that they really need to focus on. What we're seeing with a true large language model AI, and this has only just happened in the last number of months, is it actually detects risk without burying you in false positives. So it changed the game from how do I tackle all these false positives to how do I review these risks that are coming up, because I'm going to have to address these risks. It's finding more relevant content for me, and I'm going to have to spend more time on the real stuff now.
So are you seeing tangible, fast improvement in the accuracy of AI in avoiding
Absolutely.
those positives?
Yeah. I've been in the world of message supervision for it's over 20 years now, which is a little frightening to say, but it's always been lexicon and random sample, and it's always been the same problem. And AI for years has been promising, this is the technology, it's going to replace lexicon, it's going to be better, it's going to be faster, it's going to be more accurate. And really just one approach after another has tried and failed. And the large language model looks like it's the first true solution that really will recognize risk without the false positives. It's not an approach to just reduce the noise. It's an approach to actually find the risk, and that's new.
And I know Global Relay are operating particularly in the financial space, and
Right.
this is obviously very relevant to that sector. And could you tell us a bit about the role that AI plays in detecting and preventing financial crimes such as fraud and money laundering?
Yeah, initially it was a data volume thing. So you think about the sheer mass of messages. There's, larger firms are generating 5 million plus messages across all the different platforms on a daily basis. That's not even counting the trading. That's just the communications. You lay over that the fact that they're not doing it all on one platform, they're all over the map on different tools and different devices. So the idea of, number one, do I have everything? Am I getting everything captured that I need to cover? That's a hard question to answer right there. Then once you have it, now you've got to weed through it all and sift through it. And that's where AI has changed the game. So instead of just burying me, if I want to really make sure I get all the risks covered, my trade-off was I'm going to just have to wade through mountains of false positives because I can't afford to miss anything. AI is changing that equation a little bit more now. I can kind of strategically focus on the risk without the trade-off. I don't have to have 500 reviewers going through garbage to find the gems. I can trust the AI a little more. That's going to take a little time to develop that trust and to prove that it's really doing the job. But from what I've seen so far, I think the results are going to be impressive as we roll them out.
So I think it'd be good to discuss the technology in more a real world context. Can you share some real world examples of AI driven compliance solutions that you've seen improve accuracy and efficiency in risk management?
Yeah, the first place it made an impact was on the transcription, voice transcription. The little more targeted in terms of the models and the scope of the problem. Getting a transformer that can take text and understand it and turn it into written. The technology was around for a while. Even at Global Relay, we tried it for a number of years. It was in some cases laughably bad. It just couldn't deal with the complexities of language, of accents, of noise. And then seemingly overnight, these large language models that did it a different way. They approached the problem kind of holistically, that it listens to the audio and transcribes the context. So it almost checks itself. It does a sanity check as it's transcribing. So you don't get the really silly errors and the words that are obviously wrong. It changes the game in terms of quality, in that it's almost perfect. It's 90 plus level of accuracy. But also it's not word-based confidence. A lot of folks focus on, how accurate does it think it is for this word, and it'll give a confidence score. Those kind of mechanisms are out. It's a new way of doing it, and that's part of the challenge. The expectations of some customers of some of these new AI technologies are based on what they've seen AI do in the past, and it just works differently. So the old ways of testing it, the old ways of measuring it don't apply. So that's where it comes in. The first real world examples were definitely around transcription. We're just starting to see risk detection on a larger scale happen now. It's literally within weeks, and over the coming months it's going to ramp up significantly, and it's because the technology is just so new.
And you've mentioned that you're already seeing sort of palpable advancements
Mm.
quickly in how AI is operating. Can you tell us a bit about the future trends that you foresee, particularly in AI, in sort of regulatory technology, and
Yeah.
how organisations can prepare for those changes?
Yeah, it's there's usually a little bit of a lag in terms of the regulatory expectations.
Right.
If you look back at how even the lexicon, the initial message supervision approach, regulators were okay with a random sample and a couple of keywords to find risk because the technology couldn't really handle anything more accurate than that. Over the years, the systems that did lexicon work, or that did kind of phrase and contextual evaluation improved, and the idea of someone relying on random sample kind of went out the window. You couldn't go to a regulator and say, I'll just random sample and I'll be fine. They know you can do better than that, so they expect it. I think we're going to see a bit of a repeat on that. It might take a little while for AI to develop, but initially the expectation is, maybe you don't have to be perfect when you transcribe voice because, the technology wasn't there. Maybe you don't have to have accurate AI models identifying risk because, frankly, it's very expensive and hard to do. That's going to change. And a few years down the road, I think the expectations of the regulators are going to take a step forward again. And they're going to look at lexicons the way they looked at random sample. They're going to say, you can't just throw a couple of keywords in, you can do better than that. There's tools on the market now that can transcribe that voice and that can analyze that text using a fancy AI model. They're going to expect firms to take that next step.
And I know you guys are working with a global client base. And I'm sure you see a massive disparity globally on the levels
Absolutely.
of maturity country to country. I think, the USA, typically we have a perception it has quite a stringent regulatory
Yeah.
environment, particularly in finance.
Fairly
Um,
earned reputation.
and I guess across Europe, you're seeing different levels of maturity. Um, yeah, do you want to just talk a little bit about what
Sure.
you're finding there in terms of trends?
Yeah, it's interesting. Europe did catch up quite a bit. So yeah, going back, I guess it's 5 or so years now. Before MiFID II in Europe and the UK, the US was just the only game in town in terms of requirements for real detailed supervision. I worked with companies where we sold supervision solutions to US firms, and they would have UK or European counterparts, and we would approach them to show them what we were doing in the US, and their response was always, we don't have to supervise like that, so thanks. It's a nice product you got there, but it's expensive and I don't need to do that. MiFID II changed that world. Those guys not only caught up, in some respects, they leapfrogged the US a little bit because of the lag, it took them so long to even do supervision. When they put the requirements in, they added a few more stringent controls around speed. You have to supervise, but you have to be able to, respond to a request to reconstruct an event in 48 hours. Or voice was included because the technology to supervise voice was better by then. In the US and North America, voice is still kind of optional. You don't really have to do it. In the UK, it's not so much. So they did catch up. They pushed a little beyond. Asia Pac seems to be the bit of the Wild West in terms of the requirements. Some of them, I think, wisely are trying to match what the North American and European agencies are doing, just in terms of reputational risk, right? Just because you don't have to supervise, still a pretty good idea to make sure really bad things aren't happening. So there's some uptick there, but the hard requirements are not there, and the fines. It's kind of interesting how responsive the European firms have been to the regulations without the giant stick that happened in the U.S. They've seen what happens here. I guess it does scare them a little bit, but yeah, the U.S. is far and away the heaviest fine deliverers.
And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this evolves. Obviously, in the US, new government and new
Yeah,
regulations, no doubt. And as AI develops so quickly, then obviously government's going to have to keep pace. And so it's going to
absolutely.
be a very interesting area to
Yeah,
keep an eye
change
on.
is coming.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Donald. It's been really interesting to discuss
Yeah,
this. And
my
thank you to
pleasure.
our viewers for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe to the channel. And we're going to be running some companion pieces on these topics on uctoday.com. So please do keep an eye on the website. So thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you.